Thank you. Thank you very much. Is this working? Can somebody confirm? Yes. All right. Yeah, thanks a lot. When we were planning for Izinga camp in Berlin, it was clear that I will have the first slot, so I was thinking of something. How could we get started into the day after not having any event for the past 2.5 years? In fact, the last Izinga camp was in 2019 in Zurich. That's quite a while ago. And I came up with something where I would like to share some stories and some insights of how other customers use Izinga. This is a challenge that we often face because attendees of our conferences and events, they really like to hear best practices or just the story behind another Izinga implementation. So that's why I'm here. I would like to share some of our stories. You can find more on our website. I will share the link later. But first of all, who am I anyways? My name is Blerim. I'm the CPO at Izinga. And basically, I'm responsible for, well, early in the days for the partner network. Now Angelica takes over. Nowadays, I do basically anything that's not related to development. So there's marketing included, there's sales included, there's product included, and many other things. And I really enjoy being a generalist and yeah, having to fight very new things basically every day. This is what drives me and this is what I really like to do. But what's the matter with the stories and why is it so hard to get them? The majority of the Izinga customer base is large companies, enterprises, and very often they have these regulations, like they always have. They have security concerns. Oh no, we are not allowed to tell anyone what we are using, what we are doing, whatever. Sometimes they have corporate requirements, but most of the time the engineers actually would like to share their story, but they are not allowed to. And it's kind of understandable because if you would give away too many details, perhaps there could be an attacker or whatever. Of course, it should be secured, but I get the idea why you shouldn't give away too many details. But on the other hand, for us, it would be super cool to get some insights and to share them with others. I mean, of course, we as Izinga, we talk to customers basically every day. We also have larger interviews about their setup and about their requirements. And it helps us a lot to understand the perspective of the user in order to drive our decisions why we are developing this or that. You can imagine that there are so many ideas around and feature requests. So that's really a challenge for us, and talking to the customers helps us a lot in doing that decision. It's very different from going through GitHub issues or through forum postings. Because usually when someone opens an issue at GitHub or opens a topic in the forum, it's something where something is not working. And that's understandable, of course. Usually nobody comes around just saying, yeah, I'm doing this and it's working quite well. We do not receive that a lot in the public area. But for us, that's super important as well. On the other hand, it's also very cool to share these stories with others because from our past events, we received the feedback that it would be super cool to hear more about things what are others doing. Even though it's really hard to get those stories, we started, I guess, last year with Angelica to talk to customers and to bring them to the point where we can share some details publicly about their environment. There's lots of work being done in that area. And yeah, especially for open source products, it's sometimes really hard because in the end, we basically don't know who is using Izinga. Of course, we know the paying customers, but there's a huge open source community in the back, and most of them, they just use it. And if they don't have any complaints, then we will never hear from them. There's no call home, there's no statistics. We can see the downloads, of course, but that's not an interesting metric so much. And from the technical perspective, it's also interesting, I guess, for others to hear what are the challenges of others. What's the environment? Even though if you may think, well, it's Izinga, it's one single product. Isn't it the same every time? And I can tell you that it's not. Even though they are all using Izinga, there's no environment that matches the same requirements as another. Every customer is different. Everyone has different setups, different technology, different things to monitor, different approaches. And I would like to share 3 stories today with you. And the first one is the story behind telecom IT. Give me just a sec, I have a dry mouth. Already? So is there anyone here who doesn't know telecom? I guess not. You don't know telecom. So who is Telecom AG? The Telecom is one of the world's leading telecommunication providers. They operate in 50 countries, maybe even more, and they have round about over 220,000 employees worldwide. Many of them, of course, in Germany. It's a German company in the end. But who is Telecom IT? The Telecom IT company is, how should I say, kind of a substitute. And they take care about the internal services for their employees. And there are quite some employees that have to work every day. They have to make sure that the network is working, that the users are actually connected, be it in the office, be it at the home, with the VPN, with the network, with their notebook, with all the access points for Wi-Fi, and everything else that you can imagine. So basically everything what the employee needs, technically-wise, needs to be working. So in the end, the Telecom IT has to take care that they guarantee the productivity of their own company, which is a challenge for itself because the company is so big. And I have a really nice quote here from Clemens, who's here today even. So if I get something wrong here, Clemens will just shout. If you have more questions, because I cannot go so much into detail, please ask Clemens, he's sitting over there. But he summarizes it quite well by saying that they simply must be able to react quickly, because if they don't, no one else is able to work. And that is pretty important, of course. So first things first, why did they even choose Izinga for monitoring such an environment? When we talked to Clemens and his colleagues, and we did that for a couple of times now, it became clear that they kind of were unhappy with the old solution. So the support was not super responsive. It lacked some flexibility. And therefore, they were searching for something new that can actually cover these things. A tool that is able to integrate with their existing infrastructure, a tool that they can extend for their own needs, and a tool that is scalable to monitor all of these things. And they came up with Izinga. And when they started, they were pretty clever because they started directly with working with an Izinga partner. So Netways took over and did the consulting project in the first place, doing all the concepts, explaining everything, giving trainings, whatever is required for them to operate successfully with Izinga. And this is a success story because after getting these initial start, they were able to do everything on their own, even extending Izinga to match their needs. So what do they monitor? I already mentioned some things. Of course, there's VPN for the remote workers. There are access points in the offices. There's, of course, DHCP, DNS, firewalls, the hardware, the office connectivity, the data center connectivity, and many more things. So talking about these numbers, what would you think, how many devices and services do they monitor at Telecom IT? Any guess? Okay, more than 1,000? You can just raise your hand. More than 5,000? Is it more than 10,000? So basically it's around about 16,000 hosts being monitored with Izinga. Around about, because the number of course is changing from time to time. Perhaps since we've talked, it's I think half a year ago, perhaps the number has raised. And 95,000 services. And this is quite challenging. And they have to take care that this is up to date every day. And when they started with Izinga, there was not even the director as we know it today. So they came up with something on their own, which demonstrates the power of the integratability of Izinga, because they kind of built something similar to director, but built for their own needs. They have this custom deployment script which fetches data from their internal databases. Of course, there's a CMDB, there's a process for registering new machines, and they use this data in order to feed it into the monitoring. There are plenty of apply rules, and they integrated the ticket automation as well. So of course they have a ticketing system. With Izinga they are able to open tickets in certain circumstances, so they can automate the process for creating those and for starting working on those issues automatically. But they did not stop here. They went even further and started building custom modules. And there are persons at Telecom IT that basically do development for modules all the day, or did it in the past. They created a maps module before the one from Nikolai even existed. They integrated with their CMDB. They're integrated with their hardware vendor information, where they can exactly see which vendor is it, where is it located, and all these details. They integrated with their CMDB, and there's many more things. And monitoring 16,000 hosts, one challenge is to keep it up to date. The other challenge is handling that data. There are, of course, things going wrong. There are problems. That's why they have monitoring in place. And at Telecom IT, there are around about 300 users working with Izinga, or at least registered, where round about 100 of them are using it almost every day. So of course there's the administrators, the team behind it, there's the service operation center, there's people outside of the office. So plenty of people are actually using this on a daily basis, which is a huge success for them, but also for us, because we have kind of proof that what we're doing is actually really good. So what's the future behind after that? In our discussion, it came out that yeah, they kind of want to replace their custom importing mechanism with the Izinga director in the future sometime. But of course, it's so deeply connected with everything, it will probably take some time. And another challenge will be to monitor software-defined networks once they are implemented. So that's something that will come up in the future. Second story. Who knows ING? That may sound like a stupid question, but when I come to the last story, it will become interesting. So ING, just a summary, is a subsidiary of the Dutch internationally operating ING group. It's the Germany's largest direct bank, with over 9.6 million customers in 2021, only in Germany. And according to some surveys of some magazines, it's Germany's most popular bank, direct bank, and it's Germany's first agile direct bank in terms of how they work. So agility is kind of in ING's corporate culture. It's their daily business. Their goal is to deliver products and services that are a perfect fit for the customer of course, who does not that? They have kind of special requirements when it comes to downtimes because they are a bank. And in the end, they chose Icinga for monitoring. So what do they do with it? They monitor the production environment of their internal and some external applications. There are over 800 different applications currently being monitored with Izinga at ING in Germany. And they told us their mission is that they want to ensure that banking is fun, which is pretty cool. Their challenge is, like similar to others, they are growing at a rapid speed. ING's infrastructure is changing through the last years and will even change more during the next years. They are integrating more and more with the international group, so less and less of the infrastructure will be hosted in Germany in the future. And when we talked to them, one of the things that Peter Schneider said was that impairments of customer channels that last longer than 4 hours, they have to report it to the, how do I call it, German banking governmental institution, which is called BaFin. So that's something very special, because even though everyone thinks that their infrastructure is super special and it does not have to have downtimes, many of those infrastructures, even if they have a downtime, it's quite okay in many times. But if you have to report to the government, if you have a downtime over 4 hours, that's a pretty special requirement, I would say. So they have to take care to stay below these 4 hours. And they do that. So Izinga helps them to keep that. And they started Izinga using back in 2012. And there is a similarity with Telecom IT as well, because they were clever as well. They started directly with a partner. They started with consulting. They started with a basic concept, and they did an evolution through the past 10 years. And built basically with Izinga an umbrella monitoring where they can monitor the network devices, the physical devices, virtual devices, and of course those 800 applications where some of them are for internal usage and some of them are for external customers. The way how it works is that there's a room at ING, and I was lucky to see it once a couple of years ago. I don't have pictures because I was not allowed to take some. But you can imagine it as a room where like 5 to 6 people sit in a half circle, and there are large screens in front of them, like super large. And I guess 2 or 3 of the screens show Izinga web dashboards, and that was quite impressive. The service control room, how they call it, they pass the information coming from Izinga to the IT specialists, where they continue the work to solve the issues that are happening right now. So what would you guess, how many devices do they monitor with Izinga? Is it more than 2,000? More than 5? I'm just looking to the face because nobody's raising their hands. You're so lazy. They have around about 8,000 at the time when we talked a couple of months ago, around about 8,000 different hosts with around about 100,000 services. And there's a difference between this and Telecom IT, because even though they have much less hosts, they have around about the same amount of services. So we can see here that the approach is a little bit different. But there are also unique things at ING that we don't have at other environments. At some point, ING started to develop a custom module for Izinga Web, which they called EventDB. It's not the thing that we had a couple of years ago. It's something different. It just has the same name. It's a central database where they feed in a large number of events every day. And they have this criteria catalog where they can find out which of these events is actually important right now. And they forward and use these dashboards to appear on a top-level view, so where they can see which of those events are the most important ones. Yeah, something else that they say is that the quick creation of visibility through the simple ties and traffic light system allows us to see the state of the bank at a glance. And this sounds pretty simple, but if you think of this service operating center where those people sit, it's super important that they actually understand what is happening on that dashboard. There's no way how they could deal with graphs and pie charts or whatever. They need clearly to see what is going on. So the traffic light system was something that helped them a lot. So, last story for today. Who knows Magaloo? Now it's interesting. Angelica knows Magaloo. No one knows Magaloo. Magaloo stands for Magazine Louisa. I didn't know it either until they started using Izinga. And you will be surprised because Magaloo is a retail giant in Brazil. They have over 40,000 employees throughout Brazil. And they are the largest e-commerce store in South America. And no one here in the room has ever heard of them. That's pretty cool. Not for Magaloo, but they are somewhere else, so I think they will be okay with it. So what do? Magaloo has a multi-channel strategy. They have these conventional stores, like physical stores. You can walk in and buy your stuff. I guess that's how they started. They have virtual stores, like online shops. They still have telesales. It's a thing in Brazil. And they have this e-commerce platform. What's pretty interesting for me when we talk to them is that the company kind of has a mission not only to sell things, but they want to digitalize Brazil. And that's quite a challenge for that region. But they're working every day to make everything better for their customers in order to have more digital products and more portals and whatever, e-commerce and all of these things. In my imagination, I kind of look at it like the smaller version of AWS or Amazon and Alibaba, but in South America. And that's pretty cool that they used Izinga for monitoring their stuff. So why did they started using Izinga? They had a monitoring in place, like everyone else has a monitoring in place. That's how all of these stories start. But they were looking for a more practical solution. They, of course, have a large and heterogeneous infrastructure. There are many modalities, there are many different suppliers, there are many different technologies implemented, and they needed something that is simple and that can integrate into what they already have, but something that can do more than the older solution. That's where Izinga came in place. When they started using Izinga, one of the major challenges was validating what they are doing right now, which is the easier part, and then finding out what do they actually need. And this sounds simple, but if you have such a large infrastructure, it can get quite complicated, especially when the older monitoring solution had less capabilities, and now you're kind of free to do many more things. It's like a candy store, and you have to pick only the things that are actually necessary to not blow it too much. So they started migrating to Izinga. They started cleaning the data in the first place in order to have a clean basis. They started to create new dashboards to implement the monitoring checks, and most importantly, they choose to start by training their staff on how to actually use Izinga and how to leverage all the benefits, because there's so much details within Izinga that you don't see at the first glance. So training the staff was essential for them, and I believe this was a very important decision to make. When they did the project, and they did it with our Brazilian partner back then, they told us that they understood that these kind of projects, of course, sometimes problems occur. But what was important to them was that SUS, our Brazilian partner, had their back and was able to solve all of these issues and help them find out what the right way is for them. And in the end, they made it to a success where they nowadays monitor 11,000 hosts with 43,000 services. So it's like in between Telecom IT and ING. And they also took the chance to integrate Icinga with other solutions that they already had in place. I mean, of course, email, that's the most simplest one. But they already had Slack. They already had New Relic. They already had Elasticsearch. They already had VictorOps. DHCP should not be here. But they already had that. I'm very sure. They already had DHCP. And they successfully integrated it. And that's pretty cool, I guess, because that's actually our goal, and it's pretty nice to see that it's working out, that our idea of Izinga is working out for the others, that they are able to do exactly that, what we intended Izinga to be, integratable and flexible. So nowadays, most of the monitoring of Magalu's checks is being operated by the network operating center. You may think that that should have been the case before, but it was like separated into different teams. Now they are able to centralize it and to move forward starting from here. Perhaps we will do a more detailed webinar in the future. We are discussing that right now. Anyways, what I was telling today was like a small overview. When I started the slides, I had the idea of sharing like 6 stories, and then it became pretty clear that that won't be possible within 30 minutes. So there are more stories to read, and there are many more details about the stories that I shared right now. It was just an overview, basically. There's a lot to read. You can check it out on icinga.com/customers. There are new customer stories coming up. One of them being of Adobe, which will be published in the next couple of months, I guess. We are working on that right now, so we are super happy to be able to share that story after so many years, where we knew they were using it, of course, and now we have them at the point where we will be able to share it later this year. Thank you very much for being here today. It's a pleasure to see everyone here, to have a packed room. Yeah, and I'm glad we are all here. Thank you.